Hi, I'm Lee Duncan, author of the Financial Times book Double Your Business on the Marketing for Owners podcast.
Hello, my friend. It's the Marketing for Owners podcast, and I'm your host, John Butt. Today's ones to watch is Lee Duncan. Lee has helped his clients achieve a staggering £70 million of extra business. Not bad, eh? And as a leading business growth coach, he has worked with ambitious small and medium-sized businesses from all over the world. The author of Double Your Business, Lee was known at school as Duncan Enterprises. He's described by his clients as the most plain-speaking and effective consultant you will ever meet. As you'll find out in our chat today, his approach is very direct and no nonsense. You're going to get good old-fashioned, no complex theoretical models, just practical and immediately applicable advice. Advice you can use right now. Lee's many nuggets of wisdoms have been written out for you at marketingforowners.com/podcast/535 with links to Lee and his book. But let's go meet Lee. Hello, Lee. How are you today?
Hi, John. I'm great, thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, you just got back from a sunny holiday back in England, haven't you? So,
yeah, I'm shivering still. If you hear my teeth chattering, I apologise.
You poor thing. So, before we get on to your fabulous book and your theories, can you tell us a bit about where you came from? How did you get started? How did you get here?
Yeah, sure. I guess really my involvement with small business started when I was a kid. I grew up in small business, and so conversations at the dinner table were always about small business. But my dad aspired to socially climb, I think, for all of us. So I went off to university and did a degree in computer science, and worked for quite some years in IT in large corporations. Ending up running a department with 170 people and £28 million spend and all sorts of stuff going on. But I watched a program in about 1992 called The Troubleshooter with John Harvey Jones.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Absolutely. I was talking to someone about him the other day. Yeah.
God, I loved that program. I just loved that program.
You remember when he went into Morgan?
Yeah. Morgan. There was a fresh apple juice company as well. They still sell them in the supermarkets. Anyway, as I watched that program, I said to the person I was with, when I grow up, that's what I want to be. It just really struck me as, wow, wouldn't that be fantastic to help people in business? And I a couple of years later, I went on a coaching course with David Hemery, the guy who was the gold medal hurdler from, I think from the Mexico Olympics, which is before my time, honest. But he was in a program in the 70s called Superstars, where people would, various athletes would compete, doing various bits and pieces, running, shooting, and other things.
Or if you're Kevin Keegan falling off a bike.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think he figured out pretty quickly that he couldn't make a lot of money out of athletics back then. Mm-hmm. Amateur athletes really were amateur back in the 70s and 80s. And so he started a business that was all about teaching managers in large corporations how to coach, to get better performance out of their teams and people. And I really liked the coaching approach, which was about asking questions and helping people to, I guess, release their own full potential, is a glib way of putting it. And so I used that as my kind of dominant management approach then. I really enjoyed it. But as I progressed in management and as I said, ended up running a very large department, I started to get stir crazy and feeling like the corporation was kind of crushing the life out of me, really. So just after the turn of the century, just after 2000, the new millennium, I decided I need to get out and do my own thing. So I left and invested in actually a coaching franchise, which I didn't stay with very long. I didn't like it. It felt a bit too corporate for me. And using all of the knowledge I'd acquired through management training, coaching training, reading. I started coaching and helping businesses to grow, and found that many of them just got sensational results.
Can I ask you, was there a big difference between, so you were managing in a big company and now you're taking the small ones, was there a huge gulf between the two?
It's completely different, because in a large corporation, people are given training courses for things like how to recruit people, how to manage people, how to set targets, how to deal with underperformers. In a small business, you hire someone, and if they don't perform, a lot of people will either get grumpy at them and treat it as a personal issue, or will ignore it until it builds up into a mighty confrontation where eventually they get sacked. And so in small business, you see a lot more emotional management and I guess inexperience of these things, because there's simply no training. So one of the nice things is bringing some of that from the slightly dull corridors of corporate life into smaller businesses, because it's actually not that difficult to do.
Yeah.
So that's different. But the other thing that you see, so that's the kind of bringing something from corporate. The great thing about small business and entrepreneurs is they're very fast-moving. There's no bureaucracy. And so things that in the corporate world could take weeks or months to do can be done in a matter of days quite often in a small business. And it's just fantastic to see that kind of responsiveness.
Can I ask you with that one, is that always an advantage, or can that sometimes be an issue? The ability to do things very quickly without having to think about it.
Two sides to every coin. I think the kicker there was the without having to think about it, really, wasn't it?
Well, most haven't got time to think about it, have they?
I think if you don't give things enough thought, then yeah, they can become disasters pretty quickly. But generally, that fast mover thing is a big advantage, I think, for the small business, not to be sneezed at. It does. I think there is another piece, though, which is that sometimes in small business in particular, it's easy to dabble at things and not do them with any kind of proper investment of effort and learning.
Okay.
So what happens is we try something, it doesn't work, and we end up saying, that doesn't work in my business. Whereas what we should be saying is, if I do this half-assed, it doesn't work very well for me. Yeah, which is a very different slant on it. Yeah. So, the number of times I've come across a business that does something like AdWords, for example, and they'll say, AdWords doesn't work for us. We tried that. We spent £1,000 and it was just wasted money. And if you look at what they did, you can see why it was wasted money pretty clearly if you know AdWords.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a similar example with someone standing at a talk I gave, said Facebook ads doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I asked her if she tried other ways of doing it or just decided it doesn't work, but didn't get very far with that. But so you're coaching now the smaller businesses, and over the years, did you develop a system, or did you try things that didn't work and other things that did? I mean, how did this change? How did this evolve?
I think there are a couple of things, really. I spent quite a bit of time in the corporate world. While I was in IT, I worked closely with various different parts of the business, and in particular manufacturing. And one of the things I came across in the manufacturing space was something called the theory of constraints. The theory of constraints is this idea that there will always be one thing, one bottleneck, if you like, in your business holding you back. And by bottleneck, what I mean is like a kink in a hose. So if you've got a garden hose and you're trying to water the roses, if there's a kink in the hose, then not a lot of water is going to get through, and you'll spend forever trying to put enough water on the plants. Take the kink out, and all of a sudden you've got very fast flow. Well, in the manufacturing environment, they think in this way about a production line. So if you've got a production line with 3 machines, and 2 of the machines can go at 100 units per hour, but 1 machine can only go at 50 units per hour. If those things are in a line, then the whole line can only go at 50 units per hour. Yeah?
Yeah.
And I hope that's not too technical.
No, that makes perfect sense.
And so what you have to do is somehow make that machine that goes at 50 units per hour either go twice as fast, or cut it out and not have that machine in there, or put 2 of them in so you double the capacity of that part if you want to get up to the maximum speed of that production line.
Is the skill of that to actually be able to recognise what is the constraint?
Yes, absolutely. So once you can identify what the constraint is within the broad business, when you put a lot of focus onto addressing that, then all of a sudden the business starts to take little or big leaps forwards.
And I guess, you just said there, I guess it doesn't have to be huge leaps forward, because these things are going to have an added effect, a little 1% here, 1% there.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, sometimes, and again, you can think of the kinks in the hose story again as well. But if you've got 2 really serious kinks in the hose with very little water getting through, then fixing one of them won't make that much difference. But fix the second one as well, and all of a sudden you get a fantastic increase in the amount of water that will flow. And the constraints within your business can be similar. So sometimes you could have, maybe a couple of things that are actually serious issues, and they both need to be addressed before you'll leap forwards at all. But in other cases, you might have one thing that's causing a big impact, and then a couple of other things that are smaller, for example. So it depends what these things are. Yeah?
Yeah.
So would it be worthwhile picking on what a constraint might be?
I think so.
In a business.
Because I think so, because some people listen to this and trying to think of it in relation to theirs, and others will be thinking, well, that sounds easy, which obviously it isn't easy. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a theory for it.
Quite right. Well, I was speaking to someone with a business this morning. I won't name them at all. First time I'd spoken to them. They've been in business for 12 years, and their turnover is around about 250,000, but the profit they're making from the business, their income from the business, is less than 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is there's a constraint in the way the money is flowing in that business. There's just not enough profit baked into the way they work. So in that particular case, the issue is about profitability of their operating model. So they're not making enough. They've either got not enough profit in the product they're selling to be able to cover their costs and still have a healthy net profit left afterwards, or their costs are too high. Now, I won't go into detail about what this particular business's constraints were, but if you're working hard, you're turning over a reasonable amount, but there's no profit at the end, then there is a kink in your financial pipe, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And so I tend to think in terms of there being 3 hose pipes, if you like, in your business, 3 flows that you've got to get right in your business in order to achieve substantial growth. And when I talk substantial growth, because I like to think in terms of doubling businesses, then we're talking of typically 6 or even 7-figure growth over 1 or 2 years. And so to get to these big numbers of sales growth, the three flows are the money flow. So how does the money flow within the business? That's both the cash flow and the profit. Then you've got the sales flow. So how do you get new customers? You've got to have a nice, smooth way of getting new customers with no kinks in it. And then how do you get the work to flow? So money flow, sales flow, work flow. And the work flow is all about getting the work done. So what quite often happens is these three things chase each other around a little bit. So you start off with a business model that works okay when you're working for yourself and you don't have any staff. So you haven't got any layers of management in your business that your costs have to cover, and you haven't got to worry about paying overtime when it's only you working until 11 or 12 at night sometimes. But as soon as you start to bring staff into the equation or premises into the equation, if you start off working from home, you've got additional costs that you need to cover. And if you built your business without thinking about those in the first place, you'll suddenly have a crunch problem. There'll be no money left when you've paid for all those things. So if you fix those things, you may suddenly find that the next thing you need to do is be able to get more customers in quickly.
Yeah.
So there is a cycle almost where you start by looking at the flow of money, making sure that you can make money doing this business. Then you look at how you scale it up by getting more customers. And then you look at how you scale up the capacity of the business with the workflow, making it fast enough. Is this all sounding a bit technical, or is it clear enough?
That is clear. And I was for businesses, for most businesses, are there always opportunities? When you look into them, are there always opportunities, or do you occasionally come across something and you look at it and say, "No, that's as good as it's ever going to be"?
No, I think practically every business, in fact, every business I've ever worked with, we've found things we can do that have surprised me sometimes as well. So in my webinar, I talk about one of the businesses I work with is a business called Watson Gym Equipment, run by a guy called Simon Watson. Fantastic business. They do high-end gym equipment, the machinery that lets you weight lift or whatever else when you go to the gym. And sells it to high-end gyms, very exclusive places. Some of the top personal trainers in the world use their gear. Really great stuff. And Simon called me in, having read my book, and said, "Lee, it'd be great to get your view on our marketing, help us grow the business." And yet, when we spoke and looked in depth at the business, the marketing was fantastic. There were no kinks in it at that point that were holding them back. The big issue they had was that their ability to get the work out fast enough, the machines built fast enough to meet demand, wasn't there. So we looked at their manufacturing process and the capacity they had to turn these machines out, and we were able to, despite the fact that Simon had built the business from scratch into solid seven figures, we were able to improve the throughput of his manufacturing by about 60% within 4 months.
Wow, that's fast.
With almost no spend as well, which was the lovely thing. Gosh. It was all through thinking about how the work got done and just optimizing it. And one of the things I talk about in W Business is this idea of optimization. I know, John, you're familiar with the E-Myth.
Yeah.
And in the E-Myth is all about systemization of a business and having processes to run everything. And in W Business, I talk about 3 stages to systemizing a business. First of all, there's stabilization, which is where you address any pressing issues that are causing you major problems on a day-to-day basis, and getting in the way of productivity in a significant way. Once you've done that, you can then systemize the business. Once you've got it stable, you can systemize and make everything run like clockwork. And then the third step, which is what I did with Simon Watson's business, was to focus on the performance of those processes. So we looked for ways in which they could be made quicker, and had tremendous success at that.
That's a good explanation of processes as well, actually, because I know a lot of people would understand the theory of having processes and systems, but quite often once they've done them, once they've created them, they either have the problem of not enough time to create them, and of course there's the catch-22. But if they do create them, that's it. They think that's a job done, and never address them again. And just leave them to stagnate and never improve. But I think optimization is an extremely good word for that.
Yeah, and it's really quite good fun to do, because when you've been doing something in a particular way for a while, the gremlins in it can become both irritating but also invisible to you. So you see the I went to have a chat with a guy who ran a business some years ago. Before I spoke to him, he said to me, he said, "Lee, I'm really sorry, but we're going to be interrupted up to 6 times in the next hour." I said, "What? Why? Surely you've reserved the time with me." And he said, "I have reserved the time with you, but my business will not run without me being able to answer questions." And true to form, we had, half a dozen or so interruptions during the hour. I was staggered.
Wonderful. That's should have been an easy sale for you.
It was a sale. He bought on the phone before we met.
Is this because most of us, even with Watson's there, most of us are so involved in our business that we can't see the wood for the trees. We're too involved. We can only think within our own box. And when we bring in someone like yourselves, you have a fresh perspective. You've got a full world view of everything, and you can take an outside look at it. Is that why? You said they've made those improvements at Watson without actually spending any money. So why couldn't they figure that out for themselves?
I think there are two things. The first is definitely the outside of the box view. When you're in a maze, it's very difficult to find your way through to the end. And yet, if someone's looking down from the top, they can guide you very quickly without wasting any time. Okay, so I definitely think there is a big element of that. Someone looking from the outside is able to, see the wood from the trees with you, for you. But I think there's another piece as well, which is that we all operate with our own limited world experience. And so when we run a business, I once I once met a guy who ran a security firm. I was introduced to him by one of his staff who knew about me and my work and was really keen for the business to use me. When I went to meet him, he apologized to me and said he was too busy, but he had to run payroll for the business that afternoon. Now, this is a guy running $1 million turnover business.
Wow.
Running payroll for himself, which is a kind of, £15 an hour job or something. Mm-hmm. The business doesn't exist anymore, which is kind of interesting. But the guy's experience is he was a former accountant. The guy running this business was a former accountant. And so he was doing what was important to him with his worldview.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we all carry, if you like, the baggage and benefits of our experience with us. And sometimes the benefits are fantastic, but sometimes the baggage is too heavy and we need to put it down.
And we also sometimes, he's probably staying within his comfort zone as well. To give another example, it happened to me recently, and this, again, in my fire protection business, where we are an e-commerce business, and I was talking to my general manager about something, and it suddenly occurred to me that I am forever talking about it as we are an e-commerce business. And then I suddenly thought, if I think of the business as not being an e-commerce business, we might be able to think of some other ways of getting out to market. And it sounds really simple, but we are an e-commerce business, so I could not get out of that thinking until I suddenly thought, oh, hang on, why don't I just pretend we're not? And that was it. So we could now think of a load of other things that hadn't even come across our thoughts. So it's possible with some thinking, but it certainly helps to bring others in. Now, you've mentioned the book. So when did you write? So this is the book W Business. Now, when did you write the book?
I wrote it in 2011, and it was published in 2012.
And it's rather successful, isn't it? So we'll come to where you can get the book later on. But when is that? Just years combination of all your own experience, or by then had you developed a little sort of system that you just covered in the book?
Yeah, it is. It's essentially my take on how you should prioritise where to work in your business first and second and so on. And of course, the simple answer is there is no simple answer. It depends exactly where you are. Yeah. And so the book has a diagnostic questionnaire in it at the beginning, which is about 100 questions or so. And based on your answers to the questions, you leap forward to the appropriate chapter and focus on that area to give you a head start on where you should work.
Okay.
And each chapter contains anywhere between 2 and I think 5 blueprints for that particular topic. So there's a chapter on each of the big areas of business. Let's see if I can remember them from the top of my head. So there's the personal development, self-mastery, I call it, financial management and financial control, management, leadership and team building, marketing, sales, systemization and customer service. There, I got to 7. I did quite well. There we go.
Yeah, well done there.
I do have a copy of my book on my desk just in case I get stuck, but I didn't then, which is good. So I'd always thought about businesses having these kind of separate areas, and there's lots of crossover, but you have to, at some point when you're thinking about growing a business, you have to divide it up somehow. And so within those areas, I identified 22 different reasons or different kinks, barriers to growth, I call them. And for each barrier to growth, there's a corresponding blueprint to help you address it.
Interesting. So this is the type of book that you can actually use it. It's not one of these theoretical, now you have to get Lee in. It's
no.
Oh,
you're absolutely right. I have, while people do buy the book and then call me to get involved helping them, equally, I've had people email me saying, Lee, really enjoyed the book. As a result of it, I've been able to do X, Y, Z and got these results. It's just amazing. And that's just fantastic.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Of course, I'd like them to pay me and to coach them as well.
So you email back and say, how about just a small percentage then? If it did, yeah.
I did try that once, but they didn't respond.
So this sounds like a good book because in my experience, I'm sure it's the same in yours. Small business owners quite often don't know anything. I mean, it's all learnt with experience as they go, and there aren't many systems, or rather, there are. If they're going to look, there are too many choices of processes and so on, and quite often when you look into it, it isn't something that you just left out the little keys. You can't quite do it. You try it, but it's just missing that little bit that you've got to pay someone £1,000 a day to come around and teach you. So for yourself, are there some simple steps are there some tips you can give people to improve their businesses, or anything that they can get on with right away?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is to think about those 3 flows in your business. So the money flow, the sales flow and the workflow. Sometimes, for example, I'll explain why to think about this first. Sometimes someone will contact me and say, I want to double my business. Okay, so what do you think you need to do first to do that? And I'll say, I need more sales, I need more customers. That's what I need. All I need help with is more customers. And then they tell me they're working, 18 hours a day. So, okay, yeah. So if you're working 18 hours a day and we double your sales, how, are you going to work 36 hours a day? Tell me how that works. Oh, don't worry about that. It'll be fine. Yeah. And 5 minutes later, they're sleeping under their desk and telling me that, the marketing we've done is ruining them because they have no life anymore. And so the first thing to do is to figure out which of your three flows in your business has got the kink in that is giving you the biggest trouble. Because if you start focusing on the wrong area, you just create more problems than you'll solve. I had a client once who sold property management. He was in property management. And he was able to generate more leads per week than any client I've ever known, pretty much, for people interested in renting a property. Just phenomenal ability to get people in. But once he got them in, he didn't have the staff, nor the properties actually, to be able to get each of them into looking at a couple of properties and choosing which one they wanted. So their conversion rate was diabolical because he was only the staff were only spending, I think, something an average of 3 or 4 minutes per customer. Pretty much, it was ridiculous.
Oh, gosh.
So despite the fact he was generating all these leads, he couldn't sell to them. So my initial advice to him was to turn off a lot of the marketing, reduce the leads, take away the pain, the pressure. And so you can breathe. And once you can breathe, you can think and start to address the way in which the business works. And so their issue was workflow, not sales flow.
Yeah, and interestingly, they would have the confidence that they can, if they fix the other things, they can always come back to turning on the tap again, couldn't they?
Yeah, walk in the park, absolutely. And so that's what we did. And sometimes it's not the obvious thing that is causing you the most difficulty. And so that's why I always encourage people to look for where the problem is before you leap into solving a problem that you think you've got. So think in terms of money flow. So if you're busy but not making any money, or busy but there's no money in the bank and you're constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul, then it's all about the money flow. So concentrate there and fix that. Because if you've got problems with cash flow or with profitability, as you grow, they will kill your business, literally kill your business.
There's quite a few examples of incredibly successful businesses that have grown staggeringly and gone out of business through lack of cash, haven't they?
Yes. Hence that old saying that turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash flow is king. Mm-hmm. Cash is king. So always look first at the money side of things. And the only reason that there should be a problem with money is that you might not be making enough sales. And so you've got the crossover then. So if you're not making enough sales, and be careful here, actually, because one of my clients said, all I need is more sales. And I looked at his business and said, you don't need more sales, you need more profit. No, I need more sales. But he was flat out making very little money on a 7-figure turnover. Gosh. And so he wanted more staff to handle more sales, but would make no more money at all. And he was working, by the way, 60 hours a week.
Wow.
So you've got to be very careful that you don't get so wrapped up in what you know that you try and solve it within what you know, if you like. You probably need to learn or think a bit differently. What was it they say, that what got me here won't get me to where I want to get to?
Yes, there's unfortunately too many quotes that tell us where we're all going to go wrong. But But it does, it just quite often needs someone to come in and take a fresh look. If you I mean, I'll give you another one of Einstein, I think, isn't it, that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And but most people do. I know people. I mean, I know people who lose money, who've lost money for years, and given them some new ideas to do. But you come back a couple of years later, they're still doing the same. It's the same process, and you can't. I mean, when they're friends, I just don't have. I can give them that look, but I can't say, "Well, I did tell you." You can give them that look, and they probably think deep inside. But some people are too stubborn to ask for advice, aren't they?
Yeah, I think people are often too stubborn to ask for advice until it gets to the last moment. One of my very first clients, he spoke to me and then hired me 6 months later, and he hadn't paid rent for 2 years. I discovered just as he went bust and didn't pay my bill. So the sad thing was, we put together a marketing campaign for him that brought in a load of new business. Yeah, so we actually, we had I been there a year earlier, we could have saved that business. We figured out he got a fantastic USP and had a great operational business, but financially he was so far in the red because of poor credit control to a big customer. That he was a busted flush, I think they say.
Oh dear.
So really sad, actually, really sad. And I learned a lot from that. But I wish that he'd been honest with me about the financial position of the business when we started.
I think, and I would plead to any listeners who are in a position like that, is a lot of small businesses ask for help when it's too late. So
yes.
So don't You're not, and don't get me wrong, I've actually just recorded a little short podcast on this, that we're never as good as we think we are, and we should always be learning and always be looking to improve, and if we are the ones looking at ourselves deciding how good we are, that's not going to help. We need someone from the outside who's got a different view to have a look at what we've got. So I think this is a good time to, as we're coming toward the end here. I mean, I could talk for hours about this. I love this kind of stuff. But for our listeners or they should be wanting to learn more about Lee Duncan and the book and to get a copy. So can you tell us where we can find the book and where we can learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. You can find the book on Amazon.co.uk, Amazon.com. It's held in stock, and you can read some reviews on there and form your own judgment without my influence. If you wanted to learn a bit more about me and what I do to help businesses, you can visit my website, www.leeduncan.com. That's Lee spelled L-E-E, the simple way. And I've got a download on there called the Foot in the Door Method, which is all about how you can reach customers who are incredibly difficult for you to reach any other way. The kind of people who won't take your phone calls and won't respond to internet marketing of any kind. It's quite a neat way of reaching them that one of my clients used to make phenomenal sales into British utility firms, actually, the big people like Scottish and Southern Electric and so on.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite a cool download. You'll have to give me your email address and your name to do it, but it's well worth it, I promise. And
I believe if they look there, you have things. You've got webinars and videos and a blog and bits and pieces, haven't you? So
I have, yes. There's a blog, and I'm running a webinar regularly now where I talk about the 3 shifts you need to make in order to switch up to 6-figure growth.
Fascinating. So, and that's the thing, everyone, is it doesn't. Yeah, you don't have to just say, "Oh, I want to do £1 million, £1 million." You can build it up slowly, and I imagine if you build it up slowly and steadily, you'll be in much more control for when you get there.
Yeah, I think there are some businesses will grow really fast, pretty easily. Like, Air World Tours, a travel agent I worked with some years ago, we added £2 million to them in just over a year. Just phenomenal growth. Other businesses, will add 700,000 or 800,000 over 5 years. As long as you're growing and growing at a decent pace, it's fantastic.
Yeah, Skyscanner just sold for I think 1.2 billion, and they're from the UK. That's fantastic. One of those comparison flight sites, like a kayak.com, which is it's quite remarkable how fast some of these businesses I wouldn't want to be there. That sounds like a lot of long hours and a lot of eating pizza for dinner.
Well, I helped. I co-founded a business a few years ago with some guys, we grew into multi-million-pound sales within a matter of a couple of years, and it's not too scary as long as you get the business model right in the first place, that you're profitable, because you can afford to invest in improving and developing the business in the right way. I think where it's difficult is if you're in a very financially tight business where you're constantly worrying about being able to pay the bills, and growing a business fast that's not very profitable is quite fraught, and I've seen that as well.
Well, that is a great note to end on and something to consider. Now, of course, we'll put all of the links to Lee's material in our award-winning show notes, so everyone will be able to go to the episode on the website and find everything that has been talked about and all the lessons. This is the type that probably you should be listening to more than once to let it sink in, because there's going to be a way some of Lee's advice will apply to your business if you listen to it carefully. So, but for now, Lee, I want to say thank you. That's wonderful, and we're all going to be reading that book. And as soon as we have, I'm going to be looking for reports back and to let you know how we get on with it. But we've taken a lot of your time, so I'm going to have to bid you cheerio for now. But we do look forward to welcoming you again here soon at marketingforowners.com.
Thanks very much, John.